Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everybody. I can tell you that I was struggling to write this speech with everything that has been going on. You know, it does not affect people just who are living through all these travesties. As a representative, it has been held to represent those voices because it's such a huge responsibility to echo the pain, and that pain is enormous. So I hope from my heart that I would be able to bring in even just a small percent of what they deserve to be represented by. I want to start by thanking the youth movement of Ahmadiyya, the Youth Association, for having this event, and all of you for attending. It breaks my heart that we are speaking today while my people are under fire, literally every single moment. And by the end of my speech, at least one child would be murdered. Yesterday alone, we had 700 Palestinians massacred. It's 30 people per hour. It's not a humane situation to be talking about. It shouldn't be even talked about because such a thing should not occur in the first place. It should not be continuing for 2 months, for sure. So I will spare you the numbers. We have, my friends have covered that pretty well. They are staggering and unfortunately very frightening, and only gonna go up if we don't do something about this. So I'm talking to you today from a place of privilege. I'm in Canada, where it's warm and where it's safe. And I want to tell you that since the aggression on Gaza started, my most feeling, the biggest feeling that came from within was sadness, outrage, but more so guilt. Since that day, I feel guilty every time I eat. I feel guilty every time I hug my kids. And I even feel guilty when I go to bed and sleep in a bed. So what do I do with all that guilt that I have been carrying? I try to knock every single door and to find every single venue where people would listen. And I regret to tell you all that in a place where values and principles are the main character of what Canada is all about, it has been very hard to find those people who would listen. Not only is that true on the official side, but it's also in the media. I hope that those in the media would take note. So I have been a chief representative for 2 years, and all those years, the 2 years, I have never been asked to come on any of the media outlets in Canada. We have requested, we have sent emails, trying to find a platform to talk about what's happening to our people, because it's I feel that it's news to some that our struggle has not started on October 7th. It has been going on for 75 years. But the media and the whole world have chosen to tune in with all the gravity of that word and what it brings only after October 7th. So I've been in 3 weeks. I've done the first 3 weeks. I've done 23 interviews, and they were basically starting with, do you condemn Hamas? Basically, no time was there to talk about the travesties that were taken on the Palestinian people. Then there was a quiet moment where the media stopped the live coverage and talking about all the Israeli casualties and what was happening in Israel, and no voice was given to the Palestinians. Then we tuned in again into who's going to be running Gaza. And that was the question that concerned everybody. So I'm here to ask you, as these leading outlets who are supposed to present what freedom of speech and inclusion is all about, to not treat Palestine as that exception, not to have that phobia towards the word Palestine and towards what the Palestinian people represent. Because we are people who are struggling and have been struggling. We are people who have been prosecuted for 75 years. And I can tell you, my grandfather, who was kicked out from his house in Safad when he was young, is still living in a refugee camp after 75 years. And that is not fair. It's not in any way acceptable. And that is why we are here today. That is why we are talking about what's happening in Gaza today. Because accountability has never been implemented when it comes to Israel. International law didn't mean anything. But if you have an exception to these laws and to the rules-based international order, then you can't claim that you have international law or a rules-based international order. Palestine has been always the exception to the protection of the free world, and Israel has been exempt from adhering to any of the rules that it needs to implement. So don't be mistaken and think that this war is about Israel and Hamas. Israel has been implementing this genocidal, ethnic cleansing plan since our dilemma has begun. So to come and talk about two-sideism as if there are two sides. We don't have two sides. We have an oppressed side and we have an oppressor. We have an occupation that the free world liberal democracies in general are trying to forget about. So you have an occupation that is agreed upon in the international legitimacy altogether, where we headed towards a solution when Oslo happened because the Palestinians were living under occupation. So thinking that today we are talking about equal countries and wars that are happening, it's not a war between Hamas and Israel. It's the war on the Palestinian people. It's not a conflict. It's not a religious conflict. It's not an ethnic conflict. We have our allies. It's Muslim, Arab, and it's a cause for every single person who has values and principles and cares about the international law application. It's not about Palestine. It's about the rules that these liberal democracies have created when we've spoken about the organs that came to be after World War II. Those are the values and principles we are asking the world to implement. We are asking for justice, and only with justice can peace come. The problem is that we are denied that justice because with justice comes accountability. With justice comes an end to occupation and apartheid. And as you have been seeing every single day with everything that the Israeli government, which speaks, by the way, for the Israeli people and speaks for the future of Israel, says that all it's concerned about, the figures, the ministers, every single party is talking about wiping out the Palestinians, the villages, and destroying any possibility for Palestine to become a state, and for justice, for an end to this tyranny that is happening not only in Gaza. As before I came, there's an incursion in Jenin, and we have this military rule in East Jerusalem, in Jerusalem, our capital. So when you look at the situation and put pieces of the puzzle together, these are people who are occupied, and the world are looking at them and doing nothing. You wouldn't do that in other places, and we've seen what Canada can do when it decides to do. We don't want to lose our belief in humanity. We don't want to feel that there is no way and nobody for us to go to get justice. We are not allowed to resist. And by the way, I want to just take you back to 1982. In 1982, after the end of apartheid in the 80s, apartheid South Africa, and we had a resolution that was talking about the Israeli occupation and the oppression and what it's causing, the effect it's having on the Palestinian people. And that was in 1982, there was no Hamas. And that was 15 years after the occupation of Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem. So we have a plan to destroy any efforts of the Palestinian people to be. And we want to ask you to at least open your hearts and try to understand the other side of things, not the side that you have been seeing so much, either on TV, for instance, we are talking right now, and there is an event about a protection of civilians and Canada's role in that, and yet Palestine is not part of it. Protection of civilians, when you count the casualties this whole year in the whole world, and the casualties in Gaza and Palestine these couple of months, those exceed the whole world. So when you imagine that Palestine is excluded from such an event, you understand the double standard that we are facing. There is a decision to change the norms when it comes to Palestine, and we refuse for that to take place. That's why we are knocking the doors of the government, the MPs, the intellectuals, every single person who can make an effect. And we talk about the everything that's happening on the streets in our community, and the Arab community, the Muslim community, and the Canadians who have a love for the just cause of Palestine, who went onto the streets. And we say that calling for a free Palestine cannot be associated with anything related to terror or for a call for genocide. While doing so, it is another way of suppressing that voice and the voices of people who want to do change. We want to have our state sovereign and free, and our people to be done with the suppression. It's easy. There's no excuse for anything to keep occupation on. And Canada and the US and Europe have said that when it came to Ukraine. So thinking that you need to look at a picture and decide, think first where the picture is before deciding your feelings towards the people who are suffering, and what your decision to do anything about it based on if it's in Ukraine or if it's in Gaza. It puts this test on the free world and not on the people that are under oppression. That is something that we would really like for you to reassess. So what do we want? We want from the government to end the impunity for Israel and the support of anything that is done, no matter what it is, for simply having a steadfast ally. Because if someone murders someone else and they have a friend that's the judge, they can't just let them go simply because they are their friend. And that is what we are calling Canada to end. The impunity, allow for accountability. I don't see that this should be even asked. We want for international law to be implemented simply on everyone. We want Canada to end the block on the ICC, the ICJ, because these organs are, as my friend said, the organs that were created, the forums that were created for the oppressed to go to. So if you are denying the right for people to resist, you're denying the right for people to go on a political path, you're denying people to go to the international forums, what do you expect for people to do? What are you expecting from Palestinians to do? To be the perfect victim? That is not a request that could be asked, and we will never be the perfect victim for anyone. What we want from the MPs and from the government altogether, we want a recognition of the Palestinian state, because Canada calls for a Palestinian state. We want that in action. We don't want that in talk, because talk alone is not going to end this nonsense we have been going through and we don't deserve to be going through. We want to see a bill in Parliament calling for the recognition of the Palestinian state, and let the parties who talk the talk walk the walk. We want the government of Canada to recognize State of Palestine, because a two-state solution that they're calling for cannot be without two states. So let's go there. Let's prove that we are not asking the oppressed to go on a table simply alone to fend for themselves with an oppressor who needs to decide what that peace looks like when they have steadfast allies like Canada, the US, and Europe. No oppressor will wake up one day and decide then to give up what they are occupying. The next thing we want is just not to forget what Palestine is all about. Listen to Palestinian voices. Open your hearts and your doors for Palestinians who are telling their stories on TV, in forums, in events, because history will remember. We will go back and say, what have you done? What was your position when this was happening to the Palestinian people? Just like when we were saying what decision was taken in apartheid South Africa, just when we were talking about what people did during the Holocaust. We need to think about our values and principles, not simply about interests. And we need from our friends, from the intellectuals, to just talk, to write. We are hoping to hold an event, a kind of a competition to set up to write about Palestine. We don't have literature in Canada that's about Palestine. So we need to have that on the intellectual side, lectures, to have people feel that they can talk about Palestine. It can't be right to be in a place where inclusion and freedom is the value and principle that brings people from across the world to Canada, and then not be able to say the word Palestine without being vindicated and demonized. We need to end the dehumanization of the Palestinian people in the statements of the government, in the two-sideism of every single statement that comes from officials. We need to talk, to call things by their true names. And I hope that today will be a start to that. And I hope that you can remember everything and every painful event that is happening. Watch the news and read about Gaza and what's happening there. And knowledge alone, I believe that when you know about Palestine, you cannot be an advocate and a person who calls for justice and freedom for Palestine. Thank you so much, and I hope that next time we will be talking without bloodshed still being held in Gaza or anywhere. And for us to be talking about the rights and the freedoms and the next bright future for our kids. And justice will be the only solution to peace.